Hi, I'm Charity Hubbard, founder and head instructor with Rogue Classical Atelier, and I just want to talk about my watercolor setup today, even though I'm an oil painter. I'm going to be teaching a watercolor workshop coming up this summer, but specifically as it pertains to being an oil painter, since that's the only way I know how to apply watercolor. I mean, I've done watercolor before, but I am not a watercolorist. But I think that as oil painters, we can use different mediums to help us grow in our skill overall as artists, because obviously different mediums have different qualities that might be more flexible to certain situations. So I mostly use watercolor when I can't bring my large plein air oil painting setup and the whole thing. You know, I mean, it's a lot. It's big, it's heavy, it's just a lot, you know, to pack, and it's just not as contained perhaps, and easy to grab and all the things. So I have done most of my watercolor painting, maybe most of it actually, on airplanes, getting somewhere where I'm going to oil paint. I've done that a lot. Also, just in various scenarios. Last fall, the art college students and I went, that are in the program with Rogue Classical Atelier, we went through Europe, a few different stops along the way, and we brought our watercolor little kits with us, and we didn't use it as much as we thought we would, but it was nice to have, and it could have been used a lot more for sure. There was a lot, you know, we were walking, you know, around Florence, Italy, and various places, you know, doing galleries, and I know some of the students, I think at least one, right in the museums, perhaps even did some watercolor studies, but it's so easy, you know, as you're walking around, if you see something that inspires you and you want to get some colors and get some kind of study in and exercise work, you know, it's all right there. Just so mine is literally teeny tiny like this, so easy to bring, and everything that pertains to watercolor is lightweight. Even the paint, it's like, oh, it's so light. The biggest struggle on our trip for me was how heavy my oil paints were. I kept going overweight on my suitcase, even though I kept taking out clothes. I only had, like, I think one pair of shoes and a little teeny streamlined sandal that I brought with me to Europe. And I kept weeding out more and more clothing. I barely brought any clothes because my paints they're so dense and they're so heavy, my oil paints. So again, like, I'm just like, well, it's so little and light, it's so great, you know, so super handy for that reason too. So just a little tour of my setup in case you're just getting started, and maybe you're an oil painter too, but you wanna be able to do like I'm talking about. And so I have this little Winsor Newton bag, which I really like. I mean, it's got like pockets, you know, for different things. These are little, actually, they sell these postcards where you can do little watercolor paintings and send them. And then, you know, lots of pockets for your stuff, you know, whatever you've got in there. It's got a shoulder strap, so super easy to just carry along with your purse, you know, as you're going around, you know, whatever you're doing on your trip. And then, so I like to have that, oh, and in it, my watercolor set fits. So this is a Sennelier, I think that's how you say it, Sennelier, watercolor set, and it has, you know, the little paint pots there, and it fits right into the little pack. It's so tiny. And it also has a little, you know, palette there. Oh, it's all so small. It's so great. So yeah, all of that is super handy. I'm always advocating for, as my students know, for doing color charts. So like you could even do a little color chart. I just did this for my own purposes, you know, to get to know my colors. You should always maybe just have a little something like this for whatever color palette you have in your watercolor setup, just so that you can get to know the colors by doing it, but then have it at a glance if you want to look when you're painting, and that slides right in. I cut a sturdy card, the right size, to slide into the pack. The only thing that doesn't fit is my paper. It's just barely too big. It's 6x8, and I'll talk about that too. But yeah, so I do advocate for doing watercolors as an oil painter, and I'm gonna pause and I'm going to turn the camera the other way so that I can just continue the tour and show you a few things that I've done and learned along the way. Okay. So again, look how teeny this is. I don't mean to be going on about it, but this fits perfectly well on an airplane tray, I can attest. I have, done that several times. On my way to a Xiaoming Wu workshop, I did watercolors on the plane. On my way to Europe, in airports, waiting for the students to arrive. When I got to London Heathrow, I did watercolors. And so it's just so portable and just so great for that purpose, just on the fly and everything. And in places where they won't allow mediums, because of the fumes and everything, there's no fumes. So a lot of times people barely notice, people look at me a little weird on the plane, the people sitting next to me, but sometimes they get real interested and inspired themselves. So that's fun. So just a little tour of some things and supplies that I like to use. Again, this is 6x8, it's just little, and I'll talk about that in a second. So something that I recently learned, and I'm sure watercolorists will probably laugh if they see this video because some of this is obvious, and there's just stuff that's new to me. And if you're starting out and maybe you don't know some of these things, this might be helpful for you too. So something that I didn't realize is that these kinds of little paint pot things are more expensive per, I don't know if you'd say ounce or whatever, per volume, purchasing that way than in a tube. And so I didn't realize you can buy empty little paint pots and you can fill them yourself and get whatever colors you want and then fill them up. And so I have excess, I'll have some of these often in my little pack too, like a little baggie of them that I've made that maybe I, replace with and interchange colors, depending on the situation and what colors I want. So I believe if I recall right, when I did it, you have to fill it up halfway, let it dry for a day or two, and then fill it up again, and then let it dry for a day or two. You don't want to just fill the whole thing or it'll take longer to dry if you do that way. So that's kind of a helpful little tip, and it does save more economical that way. Something else that I really enjoy is my little mister. These are so great because, the thing is the paints are just in there and they're dry, but you can, when you arrive wherever you're going, just start by giving them a little mist, and so that they can begin to soften a little bit for you. And you can do that, throughout your painting as many times as you want. Just give it a little mist again. So I really like my mister. It's itty bitty, and again, that fits in my pack. The other thing that I really enjoy is I don't like to use white when I paint with watercolor, and I don't know if that's the purest way anyway to use white, but I like to use this. And so whenever I start a little watercolor, I'll make maybe a few marks with my pencil just to kind of have my, size, height, width of the composition a bit. And then I continue drawing with this. And it's blue when it comes out. It's kind of funny. And it's a masking. So it's Molotow. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Art masking liquid pump marker. And that is really cool. And it dries pretty quickly. And then when you're done with your painting, you take like a rubber cement eraser. I've even just used regular erasers, but these do work a little better. And then you erase it, and it's kind of like magic. All of the things that were supposed to remain white, it all erases, and there it is. And then you can use it for super light colors, too. Then at that point, you could put a super light color. I'm so embarrassed of how messy this is. I need to clean that. Anyway, so yeah, and then my little paper here, this is it's called an easy block, and I like these clamps. I don't know if it helps, but I feel like it does, and it makes me happy because I feel like it's one of the things that I really did not like about watercolor before I even started oil painting was the fact that the paper warps, and I'm sure there are various, ways to prevent that. I just don't enjoy when the surface is warping and moving and doing different things. And so this is an actual block. I feel like, as the paintings in here are drying, maybe it, further, it maybe helps keep it flat. I don't know, but it does help everything stay self-contained that I have in here. And so I actually have little paintings in here that I have done. Some of these, I wanted to mention too, that another purpose that I use watercolor for, and that I want my students to use it for as well, is for doing studies of paintings. Kind of like as we'll do value studies of really good paintings, and it gives you a chance to, it takes you from just being a casual observer to kind of walking around in the painting, and almost because you're really getting involved with the painting as you study it. And so value studies are really good for that, but I think this even takes it up a notch. To do little watercolor studies of paintings, and often I'm doing that, from some of my favorite artists when I'm on a plane or whatever, or from my own photos. And so this was what I did recently on the way to Europe. This one as well. This was from a Richard Schmid painting. I remember that distinctly. You can see where I used my little marker in the very beginning, and I marked out all these little places that should stay white. And then at the end, I just erased them out. Super fun. Yeah, so this is a little churchyard in England, and I haven't finished it out. These are supposed to be a different color of glow, and I can't find the photo. I need to find it. I think they were peachy, and I need to put that color in. And we sat in a little churchyard near our Airbnb and did that. This was just camping. You can do little botanicals or studies of nature. Now this I wanted to talk about too, because this was on the lake we were at recently, and I used my pen, and it was hot. It was a hot day, and then everything did not pick up. So I just want to put that out there too. If it's a hot day, like really hot in temperature, you might be taking a little bit of a risk by using this. So I even, some of these areas, they just, they won't pick up very well. Maybe some I can get a little bit more, but I'm gonna go ahead, these were supposed to be glowing like a really pretty peachy yellow. So I still need to put all these in, but I'll, any students who are interested, can get back to you on if the paint kind of goes over some of these places that didn't pick up, and if it was satisfactory or not. But one other thing I wanted to talk about with the block that's really cool is so you can paint it while it's still attached, and it'll keep it flat, which I love. It just drives me crazy when things are moving. And then when the painting's dry and you're all done, I use of course I'm an oil painter, so I use a palette knife, and you just can cut it and then it's done. I might leave it a little bit because I'm gonna finish it out. And then you're on to the next one. So that's really cool, I think, anyway. Maybe others will think it's cool too. So yeah, again, these are, a lot of oil painters through history have used watercolor and watercolor study as a way to, just supplement their skill growth in oil painting, but also just as a, in and of itself, just to dabble in watercolor on the side, I think. Some artists that come to mind, they were probably watercolorists in their own right as well, but they were mostly known as being oil painters. John Singer Sargent, Clark Hewlings, Richard Schmid. I've seen watercolors that they've all done, even though they're mainly known for their oil painting. So I think it's really useful for that, when you're on your go or doing studies of good paintings, or just, whenever you can fit it in is a good time to do art. And if this is the only way you can fit it in, you can't get out all your oil paints, I think it's a great alternative and a great supplementary exercise. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.